And I know you're very big as well on social media, onto branding and networking. What are some of the advantages?
You can't brand a bus. It's like a product, you can brand the building. So you can brand yourself. I mean, I think it's whatever you put out there, it's going to be seen. So it's obviously you want to keep it to a professional level.
So what do you like about the city of Montreal?
Diversity. I mean, you sit on a corner in Montreal, you see different types of immigration we've had in the city. It's just interesting to see all the different cultures, people interact. Such a great cultural diversity to Montreal. And we have artists that come here and that settle here. We have students, they're picking on the students. I don't know why. I think it's a very bad idea. I think there's, we should be more worrying about our infrastructure and building quality housing and trying to take care of people in need rather than attacking a group that's bringing money and jobs into the city. I think it's a beautiful international city. I feel very close to it. I love being here. We have our challenges, but I think it's a city that's multi-diversified and got a lot of potential, and it's always underrated, and it's a lot better than we think it is.
All right, George, it's a pleasure to have you on the Montreal Entrepreneur Podcast. Please introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are.
Okay, my name is George Renaud. I'm a certified property manager and a fellow of the Real Estate Institute, CPM and FRI. I'm currently the general manager of the commercial department at Royal Lepage Village, which is 5 offices, 200 agents group, of which about 15 do commercial real estate full-time.
Wow. Do you manage also some of the brokers as well?
Well, I'm responsible for the brokers technically to give them backup. So there's two different roles. Some of the residential agents may have clients that have a commercial need, so I would help that out and make that happen. So I'm basically doing business development, I'm doing team building, and I'm doing training also.
That's a lot, eh?
That's a lot.
Because you also have this background of being a teacher. So
yeah, I always still teaching. Yeah.
That's a passion of yours.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's I've got a natural instinct for it, and it's hard work. You got to be well prepared, but it's a lot of fun to get students to react and explain. I love real estate, so it's easy for me to talk about it. So and I know I don't have to learn anything. I know quite a bit about it. It's 40 plus years in the industry, so.
It's like a second nature to you, basically.
Second nature, yes,
Exactly.
That's right.
We know the office space in Montreal is always a hot topic. Where are we at today in the market space?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is what is under lease and what is occupied, in the sense of what everyone's talking about, the amount of people that are not showing up for work, that are working from home and all that. That's a concern. Obviously, the vacancy has been going up because some of the employers have tended to redo their space, make it a bit more efficient, maybe since they have some people not coming in all the time, they're taking maybe less space. However, some companies are actually taking as much space or more because they're redeveloping their space to have more interesting common areas, lunch rooms, breakout rooms, even relaxation rooms, even some types of games or ping pong tables or stuff like that. So there's actually more public space or shared space within the office than there used to be. It used to be people just worked in a cubicle and ate a sandwich sometimes at their desk and left. Now there's a lot of common space that's used for people within the premises. So it's quite different.
This is all to appeal to make the workers come back to the office.
It's appeal to get the workers back, but there has been a tendency, some leases that are renewing have an option to expand, to stay the same, or actually to reduce, so which is unusual. Usually you just have a lease that has an option to expand in the future, but people not knowing exactly what's going to happen. Some of them are actually having the option also to maybe give up some space. It's a problematic. Obviously, what is important to note is that there was 10 to 15% of the workforce was working from home before the pandemic. So it wasn't like a new trend. This has been happening for a long time. And with the pandemic, everyone more or less worked from home. And then, which is when there's commuting and distances involved and, daycares and all kinds of different things that people have to pay for. Some people just prefer to, be at home more and less in the office. So it's a strategy to try to get those people back into the office for both the owners and the owners of the real estate and also the employers. So they're working hand in hand trying trying to, as a team, bring those people back
Yeah.
into the office.
Do you think it's going to work, or it's the hybrid system is?
Well, hybrid is basically already people back at work, so hybrid is basically what they've come up with, where they say you're in the office 2 to 3 days a week. And some companies it's 3 days a week and 1 day is optional. Some it's 2 days a week and a day optional. There's nobody, hybrid is 2 or 3. It's not 4 or 5. 5 is obviously full time. So whether we're going to go back to that full time event is another story. There was also a lot of management people that weren't working on Fridays, senior people in certain firms. So that it's, getting back to a 4-day week. Some people were already doing that. Some people had country homes were going away 3 days in the summertime or a day off in the wintertime to go skiing. So there's been a tendency to reduce the number of days in the office anyways. Where it affects the most is where there's a lot of travel time and a lot of inconvenience getting to work, where it's having an effect the most.
Yeah, definitely. But let's say that I don't know, do you know the percentage of people staying at home at the moment, or we don't have that data?
We don't really have that data. The data that's been analyzed is basically Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, with usually I think Wednesday and Thursdays being the peak days let's say in Montreal.
Okay.
Some cities are suffering more than others. Some cities have had a better record getting people back. From what I've read, San Francisco is having a lot of trouble. San Francisco, it's a very difficult commute, very long commute. There's the downtown's got a lot of street people. It's a bit of a very different downtown than we have. So there's some cities that have more trouble getting people back into the office than others. During the pandemic, I did a conference at one point where we had one of my a person on my panel said, they had a client in the suburban area, and they were talking, says, well, how many people are coming to the office? I said, well, they're all coming because they all live 10 minutes away. They had free parking, and it was easy for them to come. So obviously, when there's no commute, changes quite a bit. If some people, I was talking to people in another city, they're doing an hour and a half in Toronto, an hour and a half commute in the morning, an hour and a half commute at night.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of commuting.
It is.
That's a lot of commuting.
But let's say a lot of people decide to stay home, right? Let's run the scenario a little bit. What would that do to the building valuation in the downtown Montreal?
Well, the staying at home is going to have an effect on the employers. The employers, the ones that are maybe having a bit more trouble, those that are syndicated, and that makes it a bit more complicated. There's been a lot of stuff written that you're not going to get promoted sitting at home in your pajamas. Obviously, you don't get exposed to the culture of a firm. You don't get to do the team building. You don't get to do the what's used to be called the water cooler conversation or conversation in the hallway or the informal discussions. And informal discussions are extremely important, and team building is extremely important. It's having done a lot of Zoom. I've done Zoom, Teams, you name it, training people, giving courses, and it's very hard to communicate. People are, by the time they want to tell you something and they turn on their mic and they try to give you an idea or something, and then you can't have a rapid exchange because then they turn off the mic, the other person wants to speak, they don't have their mic on. It's not the same as if you're sitting around a room and you're cutting each other's conversations off, which sometimes is very beneficial because you're getting that energy level up in a discussion, which is very hard to do in that kind of Zoom environment, especially if people don't turn on their cameras. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're doing, really. So it's quite difficult.
It's a very tricky situation now to be in. Exactly.
Yeah, it is tricky. And it's a challenge. But I think what has to be understood is if people want to get ahead, they have to be around their peers. And there's statistics to show that those that are in the office get more promotions and get more ahead than the ones that are staying at home. Now, some companies, it works well for staying at home. So if you're doing service calls, maybe you don't need to be in the office. But any type of team work or sales work where you're working in teams, I think it's very important.
Many are talking about also converting some office buildings into residential. What is your take on that?
Okay, well, first of all, it's treated as if you could just take any building and convert it to residential, which is far from the case. It's got a lot to do how the building is built and to start off with. So some buildings have windows on 4 sides. They're not big floor plates. They have centralized core with the elevators, everything else. So there's a lot of fenestration. There's a lot of windows for the units. Those are much easier to convert. If you take some buildings only have windows on 1 side or 2 sides. Some buildings have very large floor plates. So you don't really want to have an apartment that's 700 square feet and it's 10 foot large and 70 feet long. So that's a problem that people don't realize. There's a heavy cost to conversion as far as all the the windows. The windows themselves are there, but not the windows. Let's say all the plumbing that has to come in, all the infrastructure that's required for residential. And some buildings are easier to modify than others. Some buildings it's practically impossible. So there's got to be a case study done to see what the cost of modification, and if the cost of modification is more expensive than to build a new building, then there's not much. It's a difficult process. There's been some conversions.
Successful ones?
Successful. There's been some here. There's some in Calgary. The ones that are done the work. I mean, they at that point. Once they're delivered, they're the type of rental markets we have. They will rent. There's one that was done in Nuns Island that's quite attractive. It's right connected to the REM, the new REM that's just started. It's they cut inside and made some balconies where the windows were. They did a very attractive modification, but again, a smaller building, low rise, a very small floor plate, central core, a lot of fenestration. So in itself, it was a nice structure. So it was easier to convert, but that one is quite successful.
And is the government incentivizing the builders to?
There's not really that I've seen that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any programs to encourage that. And like I say, even if the government money was there, some buildings is just not feasible to do it.
Exactly.
You can't just say, well, pick 10 buildings downtown, and those 10 buildings will be converted to residential. Like I say, it's a lot to do with the floor plates and also how it's set up inside and how easy it would be to modify it.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it's an economic number that's got to be looked at. There's obviously demand. There's a demand for residential. There's less demand for some office buildings. So the ones that get targeted for that would be what we call the B buildings, which are the less attractive buildings, the buildings that are a bit maybe off core, that are not connected to the metro, or in other places like Calgary. Calgary has a connection above ground called the Plus 15. It's connected at the mezzanine levels. The buildings that are not connected are disadvantaged, and some of their smaller buildings there and all that they're more easily targeted for conversion. So, but it's an economic question, So it's really somebody's got to look at the numbers very seriously to do it.
Once they do more case study, then we'll
it's
understand.
A case study.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
a case study, really, for sure.
And with the higher interest rate and the possibility that we're going into a recession, I don't know when, what do you see the investors are doing?
In general, or just about office? Well, basically,
it could be general.
In general.
Yeah.
There's transactions being done. There's some owners that are actually going out and buying office buildings below replacement cost. They have the cash to do that, and they feel it's a good time to build up their portfolio when the prices are less high, because the prices are less high at this time. There is still a lot of money seeking multifamily, high-rise concrete buildings. That's always been a sweet product, and it still is, with the low vacancy rates on the residential and the rental rates going up all the time. Some retail is doing quite well. Some of the retail during the pandemic, what we call the neighborhood malls that were anchored by either grocery stores or farms, are sought after as an investment. Some intermediate malls are not doing well. Some larger malls, the AAA malls, we could call them, or the high quality malls like Fairview, let's say in Pointe Claire, they're full, and they've got heavy traffic. So it's and you got some street retail that's just difficult, and you got street retail in Toronto that's renting for crazy prices, that it's a high-end street retail. So it's got to do with location. Originally in real estate, they always said location. Location for street retail is extremely important. There's some street retail that is, the areas have grown up around them. There's thousands of units built. You look at something like Griffintown, the amount of population that's there now, the density. Well, you see a grocery store on the second floor there. You see restaurants. You see all kinds of service industries getting renting space in that area because they're high density. So retail needs high density. But there's investors chasing different types of product with different types of long-term and short-term goals. So there's there's transactions still being done.
Yeah. But this is more for people with cash at the moment.
Yes, lending is, we can talk about lending a little bit. Lending is, I was actually talking with a developer friend of mine in Quebec City who's just trying to get his money out from the lender, getting his disbursements from his loan. And it just, what used to be done within a very short amount of time to get a mortgage loan, commercial mortgage loan, has become very difficult. Lenders are very demanding. It's not just the interest rate. People think it's the interest rates. It's all the rest. They're asking for more capital, more investment from the purchaser. So the more money you put in, the less you have access to the mortgage, the less attractive, analyzing a property is. And they're asking for additional guarantees, and they're taking just a lot of time. So what would take a month is taking 2 months. What would take 2 months would take 4 months. So it's a very big challenge. So it's not just a question of saying, well, the interest rates are high. It's just trying to get the loan the loan
as well
approved and finished and ready on time, which is a challenge in itself. So the lenders are really tightened up the way they're asking what they're asking for as far as equity from the owners, as far as the conditions on the loan, and the amount of loan they're willing to cover. It's more challenging. So you have to have more substantial cash. So
cash is king, right?
Cash is king. So there's whenever there's trouble too, there's always we call them bottom feeders. It's not a nice expression, but there's some investors that come in when the market is very low, or you see a property that's distressed. They'll come in and buy it all cash, and they'll slowly work it through their portfolio, fix it up, do this, do that, find the right tenant, and lease it up. But they buy it at such a low value that they can just sit it in their portfolio.
Yeah.
And if they don't put any financing on it, their holding costs are only the taxes. So
it's a good position to be in.
It's a good position to be in. But you have to be, even in that market, you have to be selective. You're not just gonna. You got to be selective.
They have to hire somebody like you
who knows
to
knows the markets. Yeah.
And what about the industrial market?
Industrial has been extremely hot. I was actually just talking with one of the major developer here, major owner, and they were saying they're actually taking some of their industrial properties that are multi-tenant and dividing them up into condos and selling them off. And
Really?
There's an appetite for that. Yeah, there's an appetite for that. There's people, certain people are running after industrial. They want to buy industrial. It's more of a hot asset than it was at one time. You got to realize that not many years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, rents were around $5-6 net, and they've gone up to $16 to $20 net.
Wow.
Which is a huge increase. It has a major impact on the tenants, but you can imagine what value it does on the values. So the values have gone up dramatically. There's been some large amount of spec development or speculative development, which means you're building a 200,000 square foot industrial building without a tenant and signed up, which there was none of that happening in industrial for many years. Because the market is so tight, there's people putting up very high quality properties. Rosefellow is one of the groups. There's other groups doing it too, and putting up high quality industrial properties, and then bring it to market, and then looking for tenants as they go along. So it's we're getting a nice new stock of product, larger floor plates. They're not small tenancies, but there's been a demand. There's a demand for that. So industrial vacancies are extremely low still, and there's still a lot of appetite for that product. And there's still, I think, a good development cycle to do in that project.
So the tenants, they're lining up to say, hey, we want to be in that new property.
It's not necessarily. It's the new properties. The advantage you have is 40 odd feet clear. So if you're doing any type of distribution, we're using what's called racking, and racking with the new kind of forklifts now, you can have racking up 40 feet high.
Okay.
So you need less area, and you're more efficient. And then if the property is brand new, then it's running on it's less energy costs, everything else, and it's got brand new doors, brand new loading docks, lots of space to move around, because industrial is very much dependent on being close to highways and having good access for for the trucks to come in and unload. So those are the big challenges for older industrial buildings that do not have a lot of land for access for trucks. So there's challenges with the older products.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And in terms of the number of years the leasing goes, is it more than the typical office space for the industrial?
Well, office spaces, the leases were always 5 to 10 years. There's now some that are just signing 2-3 years because of they're not sure what's going to happen. In industrial, you rarely see. Well, for a new building, it'd be 5 years, sometimes 10 years. It's just at least 5 years and 5-year option. But the tenant's got in industrial, it's the hardest tenant to move because they do a lot of investment in the premises. Office space people don't do it as much, but the industrial people spend a lot of money for sometimes adding electrical systems, putting in their racking, putting in different equipment, and it's very expensive for them to move. And so they don't like moving unless they really have to, unless they have a big requirement in space.
So they tend to stay longer
They
than
tend to
5
stay
years.
longer, for sure, longer term. Regardless of what they sign as a lease, they're reluctant to move. They don't like moving. No,
Which is a very good thing.
Which is a good thing because it's very expensive for them. And you got to imagine also industrial is different than offices, that it's so complicated to move a racking and all this stuff. They'll be out of commission for X number of days or weeks.
Yeah, their operation would
so
be
their
shut
operation
down.
shuts down. So there's going to be a lost revenue, which you cannot make up. And there's all the costs of moving everything. Unless they're building something brand new with brand new racking and just have to move their stock. That's an ideal type situation.
Yeah, that's true. So even if the owner of the building says, okay, well, we're going to increase it, or I don't know, maybe add double it. So they have to think about the costs associated with that.
Even if they double the rents, if they go around and check the market, that's what the rents are at.
Exactly.
Everybody brought their rents up. So there's nobody at $5 anymore. Everyone's no, I'm just saying, everyone's even the lower heights, because industrial also has got to do with the clear height from the slab to underneath the roof. And some buildings only have 16, 18, 20 feet. Those are full too. Those are I've got people renting them. So there's everything that's out there in industrial is leasing up quite well, and it's usually quite well occupied. There's pockets of stuff that is available.
Course,
There's always going to be stuff that comes back on the market that's going to be available, and that's people are going to be trying to either sublease or lease to somebody new. There's going to be a turnover. There always is, but it's still a very healthy market, the industrial market, and everyone's brought their they say that the rising tide lifts all boats, but it's sort of true too. If the rates are all going up, even the less desirable properties get pulled up by that also. So in industrial, like I say, there's been some properties that were, we could call it C grades, that are benefited from the distribution cycle and everything we've gone through with the Amazons and everything else, and they've leased up. So it's been a good market for the industrial owners.
All right, so we're going to switch a little bit into your past.
Okay.
You started as a property manager. I don't know when.
I started actually, I did a couple of things in my past. I was in banking, then I went into hotel management, then I went into property management after that.
And how did you like it?
Hotel management is very exciting, except it's a business that runs 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So if you're in the management of the hotels, as I was, and more around the front desk and all those operations, the number of hours you work are just completely insane. Stimulating. You got clients, you got restaurants, you got groups coming in, always different people, a different clientele. So it's very stimulating. It's very exciting. There's a lot of energy, but it's hard to do a 40-hour week in that type of business. And I had some friends I had a friend who's in property management. I was attracted to it. I got involved, and from the get-go, I started taking courses. I took my certified property management designation. I took a urban land economics degree from University of British Columbia, and that's really helped. That was really helpful, and did a lot of work with associations. I think that's a very good combination. And property management's it's an interesting business. There's different types of property management. Also, there's the residential, where you're basically on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Somebody doesn't have water on Saturday night in an apartment building. It's a major problem. So whereas if you're managing office buildings or some of those problems, they don't usually occur over the weekends. Usually during the week, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So it's a bit less hours in the sense, less demand. And some properties like industrial, the property manager does very, very little. Like an industrial property, a standard industrial property, the property manager only takes care of the snow removal, the landscaping, the repairs to the parking lot, and the roof. So the rest is all the responsibility of the tenant. So the tenant, when they call the landlord in an industrial building, most of the answers are no, we don't. It's your problem. Whereas in office, 99% of what they call is you're responsible for. Mm-hmm. You're not responsible for their furniture and their telephone systems, but you're responsible for the security, the air conditioning, the elevators, the common areas, the bathrooms and the common areas, et cetera, et cetera. An extensive list that you're responsible when it's an office tenancy.
So you were in the office space?
I did a bit of everything. I did condo, I did multifamily, I did office, I did industrial, I did all types. And then I even did hotels. So I was exposed to all types of property management.
And what makes a good property manager? The characteristics of one?
I think it's you got to be very extremely organized. You got to be good to schedule your time. You got to be good with budgets because budgets are very important. We do budgets. They do budgets every year. The larger the company, the more difficult it is doing the budgets. It's a very big process. Some kind of companies, large management companies, the property managers might be 3 to 4 weeks doing budgets in the year, and very intense. And they have to be submitted, resubmitted, discussed. It's a very important thing. There's all the maintenance. So there's maintenance and there's what's called preventive maintenance. So how do I ensure my equipment's going to keep working? So I have to get contractors that are looking at my equipment to make sure that they're operating and they're maintained so that they don't break down in the middle of summer, in the middle of winter, or whatever else. So there's all the aspect of maintenance. There's what they call the touch points with the tenants. So which the hospitality side of things is the hospitality management has sort of flowed into property management where there's what they call touch points. So they want people to reaching out to the tenants and taking care of their needs. So it could be the maintenance people, the property management people, the whoever. So they're trying to create a link with those tenants, and the end goal is to what we call retention. You want to retain those tenants. So it's very expensive replacing tenants. So and office tenants are are the most prone to move.
It's easier.
It's easier for them because they'll just get some brand new space somewhere else, rather than they may even get with these days like a sublease. They could get with all the furniture. So if they have a problem with security and maintenance and this and that and whatever else, after a while they're just going to say, look, they would move. So if they're not taken care of, they're more likely to move. You take very good care of them. It doesn't mean you don't take care of an industrial tenant or retail tenant. There's just less stuff that the property manager is responsible for on a daily basis with those tenants. But again, you still want to be in contact and taking care of them.
It's a lot of moving parts.
You have to do the
budgeting, you have to be organized.
There's people that are very specialized in the maintenance, and then there's all side that I've done, the leasing, marketing. But there's the property management side, there's the collections of rents, there's all the system setups, all the budgets, all the maintenance of all the equipment, and then you go over to the leasing and marketing is bringing space to market and leasing it up, whether internally or with an outside team. So that if you can take care of the maintenance and you can take care of leasing, and marketing, and you can have a successful project.
So you have to be able to do both sides. Be friendly and
there's people that are more back of the house, so we call the maintenance and the operations side back of the house, and the front of the house would be the leasing and the marketing and the promotion.
So you like more to be the front?
I'm
part,
the leasing, marketing, and promotion kind of guy.
So in a case like that, it's best to have two property managers each.
Well, within a group, you'd have an operations manager and you'd have somebody doing leasing and marketing and somebody maybe overseeing everything else. So there usually is an operations group or people attributed to operations that know about boilers, that know about units on the roof, that do air conditioning, they know about filters, they know about water treatment systems. It's extensive.
Yes.
So it's not something you can just do, and you do not want to just give it carte blanche to a third party when you don't know what you're doing. So
Exactly.
you want to have people that know what it's about, that can delegate the work properly, make sure it's properly done,
Perfect.
and maintain those systems well. It's a big investment if you don't maintain them.
It's always better, like you said, prevent it from happening, preventing maintenance.
You want to avoid obsolescence. Obsolescence is when the systems are completely run down and they're hardly working. That's the worst situation.
And for vendors that want to build that relationship with property managers, what is your tip?
There's associations like BOMA. A lot of them show up at the Building Owners and Managers Association, which is an association that groups property managers and trades. That's a place where they meet up. Owners have a group of trades they already deal with. Unless they have a problem, they'll keep dealing with the same trades. And when they have problems and they're dealing with the trade, they get better service, so they want to create that trust and that long-term relationship with the trades. So they don't every 5 years we're going to change our trades. So they'll maintain the trades.
Of course.
They'll only change trades that are not acting properly or have done a problem or whatever else. Those they'll go and interview other people and bring them on. But it's a long-term relationship. It's based on trust and quality of service and, of course, cost.
For sure. And what advice do you have for those who are thinking of, becoming a property manager, or those that are just starting their career in that?
Property management is a great way into real estate. You get to know all the aspects of the business. You get paid on a biweekly paycheck, which is different than brokerage, and it's. But you won't get ahead in that business if you don't do any continuing education, get designations, and take courses that are relevant. So you build up your knowledge. So there's the Real Property Administrator, which is RPA, which is a operations type of designation from BOMA, and the CPM, which is Certified Property Manager, which is from Institute of Real Estate Management, IRM, which is one designation I have. I also teach courses for that designation.
And you still do that, right?
I still do that, yeah.
But why did you switch now that you become?
Well, I always was in the leasing marketing side of things, and at some point I got involved with a firm. We were doing what's called repossessed real estate. It was back in the 90s when things were rough, so people were losing their properties, and property managers had to take over the properties and manage them for lenders. So the lenders repossessed the properties and eventually went to title on them. And I was involved with another firm, and I created my own firm also doing that. Okay. And at the tail end of that, a lot of it had to do leasing marketing. At the tail end of it, I picked up a leasing contract, which I approached another group that was specializing in what we call landlord representation, which is representing the owners of real estate to do their leasing for them. So it's outsourcing the leasing and marketing from the property management ownership to an external firm.
Okay, instead of them hiring their own.
Instead of them having a super leasing person, all that, they'll hire an outside broker, and that broker is responsible for doing the leasing and the marketing, sometimes even the renewals. So it depends. So I was involved with a firm and started doing that, and then moved on to some other brokerage firms. Eventually went back into property management, and then back into brokerage, but I'm into brokerage now. So brokerage is, there's the real brokerage, pure and simple, which basically you only make money if you do a transaction. And there's people that do leasing internally for some brokers move in and get hired by a developer to move in-house and be paid on a salary plus bonus to do the same job in-house. Sometimes they do all the leasing, or they'll do it with the outside broker, but they can do a certain percentage in-house. So it takes a load off the owners, property managers, and it gives them a better resource as far as leasing is concerned. So some people get into brokerage, and then they'll then sometimes get hired away by owners to do the same function, but on a salary basis.
And then it's more stable.
It's more stable.
Yes.
It's very stable. Yeah.
And what were some of the mistakes maybe you made when you first joined in a brokerage?
I think it's mistakes. I think you get to. I think it's like anything else. You have to pick your associates. I work with some associates that I wouldn't work with today. But I mean,
Okay.
there was just times I did that. I had some clients I had that I should have fired, which is not nice to do. But some clients are just problematic. You have trouble being able to deliver for them.
Over
They're not
demanding.
truthful over the mandate, and it's difficult to do transactions. So, it's choosing your clients and choosing and servicing your clients extremely important. I guess the mistakes you make is sometimes you're doing a landlord representation, which you have to. It's a bit of a strange situation because you're bringing a deal from the outside to the ownership, and you're trying to negotiate with the outside, but technically also you end up negotiating with the owners. And I think there's some deals in the past that I should have pushed much harder.
Okay.
That if we would have done them, would have avoided some vacancy. And I think the mistake we do on the landlord rep side is when we're talking to our owners is to always talk about the vacancy loss. Like if we don't do this transaction now, you could be facing another 4 to 6 months of vacancy, which is equivalent to X number of dollars. Do you want to take that risk rather than just, well, this is what the deal costs. The deal always costs too much. There's always too much money. There's too much free rent, too much something. And you're trying to make the tenant, the client happy and the owner happy. So it's a negotiation. But the owner also has got the risk of if they don't do that transaction. And there's seasons of rental seasons. And there's like a spring rental season and a fall rental season, and it's very quiet normally in the summertime.
Okay.
So if you have clients that you're dealing with in January that can move in February or March or April, let's say, that's a spring. But if by April you haven't leased anything, then you might not have another tenant till the fall. So if you miss that tenant in April, the owner's going to have vacancy through the summer. So it's that season of leasing and that getting those transactions done versus having vacant space or / vacancy loss, the loss of revenue for that period of time is an important item.
But is that something that the tenant could possibly I wouldn't say manipulate, but like they take advantage of that. They know the season is
they
ending.
don't really. I think the tenants are just trying to usually say, I need to pay this. This is what I need in the space.
Okay.
This is what I can afford. I'd like to have 3 months free rent at the beginning because I have to outfit. I got to do this, do whatever else. Those are the type of things that tenants are looking for. They don't really get involved with, hey, you got to do the deal because, it's just they have a monetary analysis of their deal that they're trying to do to make it work for their company. So that's what they're lined up with. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what about new brokers? What are they maybe not seeing now that maybe you want to tell them?
Well, any new broker, whether it's residential or commercial, I guess the biggest challenge is money. You don't get you get your license, you don't have any transactions on the go when you start. So if you're on your own and you're not forming part with a team or anything else, it's usually people say you have to have at least a year and a half of money in your pocket so you can survive your initial, starting up that type of brokerage as an individual. What's nice is if you can join right away a team where you're maybe on a smaller percentage, but at least you're part of transactions right from the get-go. And, if deals that are already on the go, you get maybe 5% or 10%, whatever, a share. That's a good way to start. So at least you got some kind of cash flow going, and you're already with people that have structured and already have transactions going. Starting from scratch with no orders, no clients in view is very, very difficult.
Definitely.
Very, very difficult.
And I know you're very big as well on social media, onto branding and networking. What are some of the advantages that has for you?
Well, I think people. I think social media, well used. I think branding is extremely. I remember at one point I was talking about branding a building, and way back in beginning of my career, and the owner said, well, "You can't brand a bus." I said, "Yes, it's like a product. You can brand a building, so you can brand yourself." I mean, I think it's whatever you put out there, it's going to be seen. So it's obviously you want to keep it to a professional level. But it's, any success you have and I do a lot of reposting. I do a lot of commentary on LinkedIn, and I'm extremely active. And, I find it creates a certain exchange of information. I'm always trying to inform people. I do it for information basis, but people really admire the work, that you're trying to contribute and share things with them.
Yeah.
So it's basically knowledge sharing and trying to make everybody a little bit smarter, and trying to share ideas. And sometimes we don't all agree, but at least you're trying to say, hey, this is interesting, some different way of looking at some things. And
Because if people don't see you, then they don't know you, basically.
well, people
Yeah.
don't see you, yeah. And that's the advantage of the social network, is that you can make yourself visible. I was talking with an associate I hadn't talked to for a while that's in Quebec City, and he said, well, you did this. Yeah, he reads all my posts, but I post just about everything I do. I don't post every holiday or stuff like that, but anything I do that's on a professional, I usually post something and comments, and I'm active on that side.
Because remember, I reached out to you. I said, I see your name everywhere, George, on my feed.
Yeah, but I think it's I have a natural ability, it seems, to be at it, and I enjoy doing it, and it does. And at the same time, I discover things I learn, and then I share that. So it's for me, it's like continuing education. You're learning stuff all the time.
Yeah, it's because of your teaching background that you're becoming the source of information.
That's it. It's a source of sharing information.
Exactly.
That's it. Yeah.
So networking is important as well, because I know you do a lot of events. Sometimes you're also a moderator for events as well.
Conferences.
Yeah.
But networking, if you're starting out in your career, that's another good thing, is to become part of helping with associations, either BOMA or other associations, and joining them and helping out, maybe to do some volunteer work with them. There's the Chamber of Commerce. There's a local Chamber of Commerce, like there's a West Island Chamber of Commerce, which is smaller. It's easier to get in and start doing things with it. There's all kinds of professional associations. There's also a lot of charity work. I've done a lot of work with some Catholic community groups over the years, and that brought me additional people to meet and to know, and some business opportunities, some exchange of information too. It's and it just to have a network outside of your work, I think, is extremely important, because there will be times when your job will leave you, and it's nice to have people you can talk to that can help you out. There's there's a lot of jobs that get sourced that way. Comme on dit en français, bouche à l'oreille. Just you hear, hey, Michael, this would be good for you. Or Bob, why don't you call this guy up? I heard something, and next thing you know, a job evolves out of that. So it's all very, very good, and even that contracts can come that way to, clients.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
so the idea is to build, genuine relationship with people. Just be there and be present. Yeah.
And you only, there's all kinds of negative things. You're only as good as your last deal, but technically, I just you did the conference with Joe Roulier, and he was saying every new year I got to start from scratch, and it's basically like that in the brokerage game. You start from scratch. But I think having a personal business network is great, but personal network too is kind of something to help you, people to bounce things off, because there will be highs and lows, and it's nice to have a network that you can reach out to talk and exchange.
Yes. And in terms of branding, what would you suggest? Like, what are some of the actionable steps they can take in terms of branding? You would maybe LinkedIn, let's say, since that's your...
Well, I think, there's a chap who used to work for me, and he's on LinkedIn. He hasn't updated his LinkedIn in 5 or his current job isn't even there. I mean, people look at you on LinkedIn. The minute, somebody calls you, and you looked at me on LinkedIn, I looked at you on LinkedIn. So it's part of your resume. And I think I would highly recommend, if somebody doesn't have that capacity, to maybe hire somebody to help them set up their LinkedIn properly, hire them to set up their resume properly, hire them to, just make your packaging yourself.
Yeah.
People, right away, people will look at your LinkedIn or whatever, your Facebook. Obviously, you have to be careful what you write, I think. But I mean, it doesn't mean you don't have an opinion, but I think you got to be careful. Like right now with the different wars and different groups and everything else. You got to be very careful what you say on the internet, and people are there's some people are very upset all the time, and you don't want them upset at you.
You don't want to upset the wrong
So you don't want to
person.
upset the wrong people either. And you're trying to be not bland, but you're trying to be middle of the road. And basically, we should be talking about real estate. That's what we should be doing about. And LinkedIn should be a professional channel, but there's a lot of
Yes.
people put stuff that's got nothing to do with business there. But that's okay. It is what it is.
It is what it is. And if we talk about a lot of things just now, so if we could wrap it up or give some last messaging, what would it be?
I think I think your actions are what speaks about your personality, and I think I really would recommend that someone I usually say to people, you're putting fancy tires on your car in a pool in your backyard. That's not going to get you a job. You are the asset. And your branding is your LinkedIn, but you are the asset. You're what people are going to hire, and if you're not prepared. I had a case in point where I was doing some recruiting at one time in Alberta, and I had an ideal candidate for a job, and I sent over a resume and everything else, and they said, we won't meet her. And I said, why won't you meet her? She says, well, she hasn't done any continuing education in 5 years. And that was one owner just saying, because of that one event, is not going to consider that client. It would have been a perfect fit. So, I mean, you have to reinvest in yourself. You have to do continuing education, and association work is also a good resource through the rough spots and helping you network. So I would end with that.
So you are the asset, reinvest in yourself.
Yes, that's it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And what do you like about the city of Montreal?
I think it's diversity. I mean, you just you sit on a corner in Montreal and you see diverse different types of immigration we've had in the city. I'm in Mile End. I go to Little Italy. I'm next to the acidic area, Outremont. It's just interesting to see all the different cultures and how people interact, and in the city. And I think there's a lot of mutual respect in the city. I think the city is very well bilingual. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a language problem here. I think it's always used by the politicians and some people, but I think I've seen a lot of people make huge efforts to learn French, and take lessons and really work at it and work at their businesses to make it work. And there's obviously some people that don't, but we've attracted such a great cultural diversity to Montreal. And we have artists that come here and that settle here. We have students, they're picking on the students. I don't know why. I think it's a very bad idea. I think there's, we should be more worrying about our infrastructure and building quality housing and trying to take care of our people in need rather than attacking a group that's bringing money and jobs into the city. So that's, I would say that, but Montreal, I think, is a beautiful international city. I feel very close to it. I really love being here, and we have our challenges, but it's I think it's a city that's multi-diversified and has got a lot of potential, and it's always underrated, and it's a lot better than we think it is.
Perfect. Well said.
Okay.
Well, it was nice to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Until next time.
Thank you.